We do know that this soldier had behavioral health and mental health issues and was being treated for that.
That's Lieutenant General Mark Milley at Fort Hood, Texas, where there was another tragic shooting late yesterday afternoon, early evening. 4 people are dead, including the shooter, and some 16 people were injured. Joining us on the line right now is John Lott, who is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, the author of the famous book, More Guns, Less Crime. And, John, I guess we should start out by pointing out there's sort of a family connection to this story. Is there not?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many of these types of horrible events that I've concentrated on over the years, but I have a son who's stationed at Fort Hood. He just got back from a tour of duty in Afghanistan, and he was literally just a couple blocks away from the attack. He could hear the shots and see people fleeing the scene when it happened. And, so I've written about the dangers of these types of gun-free zones, and in fact, even with soldiers being banned from having guns with them on bases.
Well, hold on, sir. Let me sort of back up. There is a rule in effect on military bases that, short of the MPs who guard the gates, am I correct, that no one is allowed to carry a gun?
Right. I mean, you have MPs can be around on the general base, but they're mainly located at the entrances. And the rest of the time, it's kind of like police for us, generally. I mean, they're around, but nobody expects them to be there instantly when these types of horrible attacks happen.
All right, but then...
the irony is somebody like my son's trusted with a weapon when they're in Afghanistan, or my son also has a concealed handgun permit, so he's able to go and carry a gun around off the base. But when he's on the base there, he's not able to go and defend himself or others. And the problem is that people like my son who obey the rules there, who know they're not supposed to have a weapon with them on base there with ammunition, and in this case, the killer takes advantage of that. You have a situation where the killer breaks the rules, and rather than the rules making people safer, it actually makes it easier for the killer to go and engage in his attack.
Well, right. In this case, this murderer, he broke the rule by having a gun, but also, how about attaining the gun? I mean, this guy was under very serious medical observation. They had not yet given him a diagnosis, but he was able to purchase a firearm while he was undergoing serious psychiatric evaluation. Isn't there something that can be done about that?
Well, it's always easy to look at these things after the fact. The problem is it's really hard to completely secure an area. If somebody spends time in so many of these mass shootings, people are planning these things for many months or even years in advance, it's very hard to stop them. And that's one big fault I have with the recent Department of Defense review of the Navy Yard shooting. The only thing they concentrated on was the failure of the system to properly identify the mental illness for the shooter in that case. And that's great. Monday morning quarterbacking, it's relatively easy then to go and find a problem and see the mistakes. But it's bizarre to think that we're always going to be able to identify these people before a problem occurs, or even that everybody who's going to be engaging these attacks is going to be somebody who has a mental illness problem. You're going to have terrorist attacks or other types of events that are going to be occurring. And the thing is, allowing soldiers to be able to go and have sidearms with them or others is the best line of defense when that fails. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to keep people with mental illness from being able to go and obtain a gun, but people have to recognize we're not always going to identify those individuals, and we're not going. Even when we do identify them, it's very difficult to stop them from obtaining weapons.
I think the most interesting thing that you say here is that your son in Afghanistan carries a weapon all the time. And yet when he comes back to the United States, when he's in Texas, he's off the base, he can carry a gun to defend himself, as many Texans do. But yet when he's on the base, on the military base, he doesn't have that same right.
Right. Well, my guess is most people are shocked that soldiers who have undergone extensive training aren't trusted with weapons there. And it's here you have a situation where, at the Navy Yard case, I remember a father. I mean, it's ironic. I hear an interview like that, given my own situation now. A father whose son was a Marine, was an expert in urban warfare. His son could hear the shots, and yet he didn't have a weapon with ammunition that allowed him to go towards the event and try to stop it sooner.
John Lott, can you give us some background on this? What's the history? What was the rationale behind? Because it's a recent decision. It's only been enacted for about 15 years or 20 years. Why are our soldiers not trusted with their firearms when they're on a base in the U.S.?
Well, it started at the end of the first Bush administration. Their reasoning was that they wanted to make military operations more professional, such as what you would have in a regular business environment in American business workplaces. And so they didn't think that it would be professional to have soldiers have sidearms with them when they were around there. And so they started that process, and then the beginning of the Clinton administration in 1993 decided to go forward with that rule change and put it into effect. So it's only this ban, and before it would be up to military base commanders to go and make the decision. But now, after 1993, we've had this general ban unless you have an imminent threat that's there that you might have on bases that are in combat situations.
So it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even under the pretense of safety. It was just for a professionalism that it seems like that should be reevaluated at this point.
Well, you'd think so. I mean, I'd hope people would just reevaluate these gun-free zones in general. I mean, at some point, I just wish the media, once in a while, would go and say, when they go through all the other things, like where the person may have obtained the gun, whether they had mental illness, often the easiest thing for a reporter to check is, were guns banned from the place where the attack occurred? And sometime people have to recognize that with just two exceptions, at least since 1950, all the multiple victim public shootings in the United States have taken place where guns are banned. And you see these individuals, they surely act as if they're trying their best to find areas where victims can't defend themselves. You look at the Aurora movie theater shooting in 2012. There you had 7 movie theaters within a 20-minute drive of the killer's apartment. Only one of them banned permitted concealed handguns with posted signs. The killer didn't go to the movie theater that was closest to his home. He didn't go to the movie theater that advertised itself as having the largest auditoriums in the state of Colorado. He went to the single place where permanent concealed handgun holders weren't able to go and defend themselves. You see this at mall shootings. You may have 7 malls in Omaha, Nebraska that are enclosed. Only one banned permanent concealed handguns. Guess where the attack occurred there?
Yeah.
Or Salt Lake City or other places. You know, few people know, like the Columbine case, how Dylan Klebold was strongly against the concealed carry law that was being considered before the state legislature at that time. He apparently was writing his state legislators particularly upset that the law that was being considered would allow permanent concealed handguns on school property. And almost nobody realizes that the day of the Columbine shooting was the same day that the state legislature was scheduled for final passage of the concealed handgun law.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there, but I mean, these are stubborn facts that need some consideration on the national platform. Thanks a lot so much. Appreciate